now, this one must be very profound. The Ethics of Aristotle. Now, anybody that read that must believe he's a cut above anybody that hadn't. See, it's no good, Montag. We've all got to be alike. The only way to be happy is for everyone to be made equal. So, we must burn the books, Montag.
We want to be free. We want to be free to do what we want to do. We want to be free to ride. We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of it left. Because my children are coming. I told you 20 years ago.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
In my way of thinking, without judgment, you might as well be dead. Your brain is, so why not the rest of you? We were talking about marijuana. We still are. Marijuana is the flame, heroin is the fuse, LSD is the bomb. So don't you try to equate liquor with marijuana, mister, not with me.
Pop your culture.
All right, here we are. This is Pop Your Culture on Radio Gordo and on Cheer FM. I'm your host, Randall Liberon, guiding us through an interesting audio journey on this week's show, because this week's show is in honor of the 80th anniversary of Bicycle Day. Now, Bicycle Day is in reference to April 19th, 1943, when Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann made the first intentional LSD trip known to the human race. That's right. On that day in his Sandoz laboratory, he dosed himself with what he figured was going to be a minuscule dose. 1/4 milligram. That's 250 micrograms. An infinitesimal amount of this chemical. He'd been working with the ergot mold off of rye bread. He was creating a series of syntheses with this. He had started in 1938. It was when he first synthesized LSD 25 in the laboratory. That's lysergic acid diethylamide 25. He was working with the ergotamine fungus, and it was 5 years later that he decided to go back and revisit this compound. There was a nagging suspicion that he had that perhaps he'd overlooked something in the importance of this molecule. He went back to it, and on April 16th, after synthesizing it once again, we're talking 1943 here at this point, he felt strange and was no longer able to complete his day's work. He took the rest of the day off, went home. The next day, he was sort of wondering what it could have been. And to the best of his recollection, about the only thing that he assumed it could have been is maybe, just maybe, he had somehow had a certain amount of the chemical he was working on hit some skin, and he absorbed it. Now, he had no way of knowing exactly how much of the chemical it might have been. So he figured, well, you know, it was maybe just a drop, and a drop definitely isn't much, so maybe, just maybe, 1/4 milligram should be sufficient. Now, if we want to look at it in terms of today's apparent dosages of LSD, if a person was able to track some down, you're typically looking at 75 to 100 micrograms in the average dose. He thought he was taking an infinitesimal amount. He took 250 micrograms. That is nearly, if you look at things on the lower end, that is nearly 4 times the average dose. That is considered an incredibly strong dose by today's standards. So when you look at pictures of Albert Hofmann from 1943, here is your clean-cut, glasses-wearing, button-down Swiss chemist who purposely ingested LSD in the laboratory. And when it became too intense to continue work, he decided to ride his bicycle home. Hence, Bicycle Day. During that bicycle ride home, the drug came on in an incredibly strong way. He made it back home, and experienced an intense trip. This week's show, we're going to incorporate not only music across multiple eras, but we're going to also incorporate interesting audio segments, talks from just incredibly important figures in this field. Augustus Owsley Stanley III shows up in some of these audio clips. We have Alan Watts showing up. And then in this very first clip, we have 4 of the highest ranking, I suppose, if we want to impose a hierarchy upon this, 4 of the highest ranking names in this field of psychedelic research, especially as it pertains to LSD. Featured in this first clip opening up the show tonight, we have Timothy Leary, Stanislav Grof. Now, Stanislav Grof, he started to pioneer the holotropic breathwork methodology of achieving an altered space. I've actually had a holotropic breathwork session. Really interesting. I will say that. It was really interesting. You change the body chemistry by essentially hyperventilating, and he wanted to do that when LSD was made illegal. His research that he was doing in the 1960s came to a halt as a result, and he wanted to be able to continue his exploration of non-normative states in a way that, well, you know what, the government couldn't take it away. Hence holotropic breathwork. He features in this clip. There's also Dr. Humphrey Osmond, who's an interesting Canadian connection working in the prairies in the 1960s. He was pen pals with guys like Aldous Huxley, and it was in letters between Huxley and Osmond that the two of them ended up coining the term psychedelic to apply to chemicals like LSD-25 or mescaline or psilocybin, that whole field. They were originally calling them things like psychomimetics, mimicking psychosis, but they wanted to think of manifesting mind, revealing mind, psychedelos. Humphrey Osmond is in this clip, so that's pretty cool. But of course, got started off with the man himself from a documentary called Hoffman's Potion. Let's start it off, and up first is Albert Hofmann.
I was walking in a beautiful May morning. Suddenly, I stopped and I had the feeling everything had changed. The wood was beautiful, beautiful green, and I had the feeling that I saw now the wood as it really is. And I had the feeling I would be included by it. I had a feeling of happiness I had never had before. And this gave me the security that if you have open eyes, you may see the world in a different way. I mean, you see it as it really is. Wonderful.
1943. War rages across Europe. In the neutral confines of Switzerland, chemist Albert Hofmann is hard at work at the Sandoz Pharmaceutical Company's Basel laboratory. While searching for a cure for migraine headaches, Hofmann accidentally ingests a minute amount of an experimental substance that would change both his life and the world, LSD-25. Many would come to view it as a spiritual antidote to the atom bomb. Before the decade is over, Sandoz has sent Hofmann's discovery to researchers and psychiatrists all over the world for testing. Research projects spring up in such places as Canada, the US, England, and Czechoslovakia.
One day we got a large box full of ampoules, and it was LSD. And there was an accompanying letter that said this was a very fascinating substance, discovered practically by accident, or Dr. Hofmann, the discoverer, likes to call it serendipity rather than accident.
When I discovered LSD, it was believed it was a product of laboratory. And then we discovered that these compounds had existed already for thousands of years in the plant kingdom. Not exactly LSD, but practically.
When he intoxicated himself accidentally, he discovered that this was a very, very powerful psychoactive substance, and then he confirmed it in a planned self-experiment.
being a cautious man, I started with a very, very little amount, only with a quarter of a milligram I tested. And then I had I could say a terrible experience.
We take a long time to get used to our world when we're... well, we take many years, in fact, learning about it and learning how to behave in it. And when it changes, suddenly and dramatically, we may not like this.
After some hours, when I was laying in the bed, I came back. I came back for a foreign, quite foreign existence to new life. I saw, certainly, I realized how wonderful our Earth is. I felt newborn, to be newborn, and even the next day, when I went in the garden, the world was new.
Just what is LSD and what does it do?
The effect is somewhat like looking through a microscope. Suddenly, when you look through a microscope, you discover that there's an invisible world around you that you hadn't known about before you did it. The same thing is true of the psychedelic drug. You're aware of processes that are going on inside your own brain. You're aware of the exchange of energies that are going on between your sense organs and the energies around them that you weren't aware of before.
Generally, you have no hallucinations with LSD. Hallucination is if you see something which does not exist. Just... but under LSD, you see things which are transformed, and comes. It is a different view, a different experience of our existence.
The very fact your senses change means that you're faced with a lot of new and quite unfamiliar problems. I mean, you suddenly become aware of the textures and colours. All these things suddenly become immensely important.
For myself, these experiences have been most strange, most awesome, and in their own way, amongst the most beautiful in my life. A sense of special significance began to invest everything. Everything was brilliantly sharp and significant. If I fixed my attention on a flower, I felt that I could spend all day in contemplating it. Phrases such as, "I've seen with the eye of the world," "the eye of the newborn and the new dead," sprang to my tongue, apparently without construction. A plain wooden chair was invested with a chairiness no chair had ever for me before.
One begins to see significance in things that you didn't see before. Many people become aware of a quite different world.
Interesting to hear those guys themselves talk about the chemical lysergic acid diethylamide 25. Interesting chemical in that, well, when you look at it, you can make some interesting presumptions to how this maybe has affected Western societal development in a roundabout way. When you look at some of the witch trials that had happened, it happened after there were large instances of rye stalks going moldy. Of course, rye was a grain that was used to make a lot of breads. When you look at essentially an overlap of areas that were affected by the fungus that grows on rye, which is ergot, and that is one of the very basic building blocks of lysergic acid diethylamide, that affected the crops, and it was subsequently when these people needed to still eat food. They didn't have the ability to just throw everything out, import something from somewhere else. They wouldn't purposely eat as much of the moldy grain as they could, but some of it worked in there. And it is said that perhaps that lent itself to some of the witch crazes that were going on, that people weren't necessarily thinking right. And you could almost say that, hey, maybe there was almost LSD-like effect going on. Or maybe not. Who knows? Things with LSD are never simple. They're often quite complicated, and that's kind of the message behind this song. This is Queens of the Stone Age, going back to their album Rated R, released, wow, 23 years ago now, back in the year 2000. This is the song Monsters in the Parasol.
The walls are closing in again, oh well. The walls are closing in again, oh well. I've seen some things I thought I never saw, covered in hair. Paul's dad is warped and bubbling, oh well. Paul's dad is warped and bubbling, oh well. And my mind is up here on another wave, covered in hair. She won't grow, 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 she won't grow. You've got a monster in your parasol. 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 Our sister is an alien, oh well. Our sister is an alien, oh well. And I've seen some things I thought I never saw, covered in hair. She won't grow, 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 she won't grow. You've got a monster in your parasol. You've got a monster in your parasol. You've got a monster in your parasol. You've got a hole in you I never saw. In your parasol. In your parasol. In your parasol.
Now, you see, what is, let me speak specifically for a moment. I said the subject of this is LSD. LSD is one such chemical that does produce this curious effect of making you aware of the polarity of things. It does lots of other things. It does lots of rather unessential and trivial things. And these, of course, in all the publicity in the various national magazines about LSD, get thoroughly emphasized. In other words, when somebody says something's real psychedelic, they mean bizarre. And when the national magazines try to illustrate the effect of these chemicals with various photographs, they come on with blurred photographs of all sorts of things higgledy-piggledy messed together. naked girls seen through prisms. Well, that's absolutely nothing to do with it. If you wanted some sort of appropriate illustration for a Life magazine article on the effects of LSD, you would have one very simple solution. You would publish the most gorgeous color reproductions of Persian miniatures and of Moorish arabesques and of the illuminations of Celtic manuscripts. That would give you the story, so far as changes in human sensation are concerned. But there would be one thing very difficult to put across in pictures, because the people who looked at them, if they didn't get the point of view, wouldn't see it. And that is what I will call the sensation, as well as the intellectual understanding, of polarity. That is to say, that the inside and the outside, the subjective and the objective, the self and the other, go together. In other words, there is a harmony, an unbreakable harmony. When I'm using the word harmony, I don't necessarily mean something sweet. I mean absolute concordant relationship between what goes on inside your skin and what goes on outside your skin. It isn't that what goes on outside is so powerful that it pushes around and controls what goes on inside. Equally so, it isn't that what goes on inside is so strong that it often succeeds in pushing around what goes on outside. It is very simply that the two processes, the two behaviors, are one. What you do is what the universe does. And what the universe does is also what you do. Not you in the sense of your superficial ego, which is a very small, little tiny area of your conscious sensitivity, but you in the sense of your total psychophysical organism, conscious as well as unconscious. This is not something that arrived in the world from somewhere else altogether, that confronts an alien reality. What you are is the universe, in fact, the works, what there is, and always has been, and always will be forever and ever, performing an act called John Doe. And this is such a subversion of common sense, but is in fact, matter of fact, something, if you stop to think about it, that is completely obvious. Only everything conspires to prevent you from seeing that obvious thing.
From Alan Watts, that was one of his best descriptions of LSD, an interesting audio clip there. Alan Watts, of course, a very wild figure, sort of a thinker of the later 20th century, or mid to later 20th century. Watts was a guy who, I guess if you were to put some labels on him, he was into philosophy, whether it be of mind, religion, life, metaphysics, all that kind of stuff, psychology. He helped popularize a lot of Eastern mysticism at a time when the West was becoming increasingly more interested in things outside of their own typical Judeo-Christian concepts of things. And of course that dovetailed nicely with mind expansion chemicals like LSD, and it was only natural that maybe this guy's going to have some interesting opinions on it, and we heard some of them right there. This is Pop Your Culture right here on Radio Gordo and on Cheer FM. You're listening to us either on a Sunday night, Saturday night, midnight, but that's technically Sunday, or Sunday afternoon, or Wednesday evening. We're located in many places in time, although not necessarily at the same time, if you get my drift. It's almost lysergic in and of itself. This next track is a little bit lysergic as well. The group is called Yawn. The track is called Acid.
I doesn't just believe in me, just me, staring outside snow. Where up and let it go, but I never take back all my things to be again. Say I go, it'd be very hard to leave the girl, but I don't even know. I don't think that even got between the legs of my mother, will the growling sounds resound in me forever? 'Cause I took a bit too much, and now my heart's in all the rush. I can't remember tender me.
The band was called Of Montreal. The song Lysergic Bliss, a nice follow-up to Yawn and Acid. Of Montreal is a band that definitely not of the original psychedelic flourishing in rock music, but they definitely trace back their penchant for the weird and the off-kilter, the interestingly and obtusely verbose lyrics, incredibly interesting psychedelic artwork. They are spiritual and basically children of the original psychedelic rock movement. Really dig their work. Kind of just all over the place. Extraordinarily prolific. I've dug them for a while now, although I've fallen off with their output. I'm sure that really since I last checked in with them, they've probably put out about 8 albums. The amount of work that they have released is amazing. 2007's Hissing Fauna, Are You the Destroyer? Is a personal favorite of mine. The Past is a Grotesque Animal is an amazing song. Truly, truly amazing song. But we digress from the main topic tonight, and that is the 80th anniversary of Bicycle Day, which occurred on April 19th of this year. Of course, that's the day before, well, the typical stoner holiday of 420, and I thought that, I guess, was cooler back in my youth, although there's a part of me that thinks the whole cannabis culture is different now than it used to be. You know, it's we went from a government throwing people in jail for far too long for smoking a flower to when the pandemic first hit, declaring it an essential service. You gotta wonder maybe what some of the motives behind that were. It's a little weird, a little fishy. You know, I'm Gen X, so you know, I think it's natural to not always trust the government. But anyways, let's bring it back to the thing at hand, and that is the world of LSD in the wake of the 80th anniversary of Bicycle Day. We're going to get into 2 extended pieces here. We're going to break it up in the middle because it's a side 1 and a side 2. Released in the mid-late 60s, there was an album called LSD, A Documentary Report. Side 2 was The Trip. They actually record an experience, but side 1 is The Scene. And I think this is a really interesting audio document to really encapsulate not only some of the cultural figures that were going on, but some of the cultural hysteria that was going on at the time. Basically put together after LSD was newly criminalized as it was made illegal in October of 1966. It's hard to believe that this was actually legal, right? Like, right, you could go into a head shop and buy LSD. Weird times, man, weird times. Anyways, on Popular Culture, this is LSD, The Scene.
What you're listening to are musicians performing psychedelic music under the influence of a mind-altering chemical called LSD. What you're hearing now is the hysterical laughter of a young man shaken by a wild hallucination midway through an LSD trip.
Oh, I'm so happy right where I am right now. Right where I am, I'm so happy.
Millions of Americans will illegally consume lysergic acid diethylamide, commonly known as LSD, during the next 12 months. Such indiscriminate use of LSD, once solely intended for scientific research, has snowballed into a nationwide crisis. Teenagers prowl along the Sunset Strip in Los Angeles, high on the drug. Some of them chew the bark off trees and growl like dogs. They alternately writhe on the floor, screaming, cower in a corner, or dreamily prop themselves against the walls. 10,000 thrill seekers attend a 3-day LSD festival in San Francisco, undulating to atonal music while experiencing way-out trances. LSD pushers openly sell the drug on dozens of college campuses. Adherents include corporation presidents, noted educators, a magazine publisher. But it's mostly unsupervised teenagers, the rebellious adolescents searching for identity, who embrace LSD and sound its praises.
And it was the most beautiful thing in the whole world. And then the paintings on the walls were dripping. Just, you could see the paint coming down them like this, just like somebody was hosing it off at the top and all the paint was running down into the floor. But it was so pretty. They were running. Just like they were melting. Yeah. It was groovy. But that's the only hallucination I got off the whole trip.
Often, however, they put it to frivolous use. A colorless, odorless, tasteless, inexpensive substance. It's considered by the majority of them to be nothing more than a shortcut to instant bliss, where actually it may be dangerously harmful. It's as easy to obtain as a hamburger at a local drive-in. In major cities like New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, a purchase can be made on a street corner, in a delicatessen or a coffee house. Night spots frequented by this clientele carry names like The Trip, Lysergic A-Go-Go, The Doors of Perception, and The Brave New World. Members of the acid scene are no longer underground. Their widely dilated pupils are inevitably shielded from the light by dark glasses, whether the users are dropping caps while seated in the back of a motorcycle or languishing in a movie theater watching The Last Year at Marienbad or Juliet of the Spirits, surrealistic films which have heightened meaning for those who are turned on. It's a disenchanted, restless, insecure generation continually searching for new kicks. A 19-year-old expresses her feelings.
Well, I never think of when I'm 20 or when I'm 21. I think of tomorrow. Or this minute. And hope there's tomorrow. 'Cause I don't like what's going on in the world. I'm scared of that. More than drugs. I'm not afraid of them. I'm just scared, Everybody is pretty uptight.
An LSD pusher who sells the chemical at $5 a cap tells why his business is burgeoning.
And these people have the attitude, you live once, so why not take it?
And apparently a widespread breakdown in parental discipline has removed the most basic restraints. A 14-year-old who was also experimented with heroin and Benzedrine was asked whether her mother knew about her LSD habit.
Yeah. She does everything. I don't have to hide anything from my parents. They're not that way. I don't hide anything from my parents, they don't hide anything from me. And we have a very good relationship. We don't love each other, but that's okay.
The lack of love in the turbulent climate of the 60s, combined with the sensational publicity caused by the drug and its easy availability, have triggered the rampant psychedelic craze. Dr. Sidney Cohen, chief of psychiatry at the Wadsworth Veterans Administration Hospital in Los Angeles, and author of an LSD survey called The Beyond Within, describes the evolution of the drug from its less frenetic beginnings.
Since that day, 23 years ago, when Dr. Albert Hoffman accidentally inhaled enough lysergic acid diethylamide to cause him to take to his bed, LSD has passed through 3 distinct phases. The first was a period of scientific investigation, when a variety of mental aberrations were examined. At that time, the LSD state was called a mottled psychosis, a schizophrenia in miniature. Later, some of the scientists observed that many of the reactions were not madness at all, and they proceeded to explore the possibility that the drug might be effective in the treatment of certain mental disorders. that it might help us understand the creative process, the nature of perception, and other human mental activities. Today, scientific research with LSD is declining. 5 years ago, the second period began, the idyllic, psychedelic, evangelic era. This was a movement spawned at Harvard by Drs. Leary and Albert, later to infiltrate many a campus and offbeat group. The psychedelic persuaders made the most attractive assertions that the experience would free us from life's games so that we could enter into non-game ecstasy, that our mental abilities would multiply 100-fold, that our consciousness would be expanded out to the ultimate. Now the third phase is upon us. In the past 2 years, the acid head has taken over. Most of the takers are out for fun, an LSD high. The doses erupt, the music gets louder, the lights swirl faster, and the chap who freaks out just hasn't passed the acid test. A surprising number of these youngsters don't even know who Timothy Leary is. Or if they do, they think he's the guy who started the party.
Psychologist Timothy Leary, a smooth-talking 45-year-old, is regarded as the leading American LSD missionary, as well as the movement's most controversial figure. His early LSD experiments, where he used Harvard University undergraduates, resulted in his expulsion from the school's faculty. Recently, he was facing a jail sentence as lengthy as 30 years for transporting marijuana. Leary has appealed the verdict. While out on bail, his seductive talks on the virtues of LSD draw huge college audiences.
The LSD trip is a pilgrimage far out beyond your normal mind into that risky and revelatory territory which has been explored for thousands of years by mystics and visionary philosophers. In the last year, we are told that perhaps 1 million Americans, most of them young people, have made the LSD experience a part of their lives. Is this a social menace and a cause for alarm? I don't think so. I see nothing less than the speedy evolution of a new indigenous religion. The LSD religionist knows that the temple of worship is the human body, that the shrine must be located not in a public place, but in the privacy of your own home, and that the congregation cannot extend beyond your family and your closest friends. In 15 years, the high school and college students who are experimenting with LSD will be running many of our institutions and guiding public policy. Remember, the college students who are using LSD and marijuana today do not comprise a criminal class. They are not drug addicts seeking to escape. They are your best educated, your most creative, and your most courageous young people. And like it or not, they're going to build you a new civilization.
Leary's detractors argue that his rhapsodic, high-minded thoughts exert a strong appeal on individuals likely to be injured by the drug. There's no doubt that many of the young, ignorant of the high potency and danger of LSD, have been swept up in the aura surrounding the drug. Some of them wear buttons on their lapels and place bumper stickers on their cars reading, "Support your local travel agent," meaning the source of supply who provides the trip-taking chemical. Since the only legitimate source of LSD in the United States is restricted to approved researchers, the user finds himself obliged to deal on a black market which has reached enormous proportions. Planes smuggle huge batches into this country from Canada, Mexico, England, Czechoslovakia. But actually, anyone with a working knowledge of organic chemistry can readily synthesize LSD. As a result, the LSD available in the current seller's market is manufactured largely by amateurs. Often it's of dubious quality. At Capsule Corner, a crossroads for acid heads in Los Angeles, customers can purchase LSD in a variety of forms, impregnated in sugar cubes, chewing gum, blotting paper, mixed with baking soda in a capsule, absorbed in a matchstick, or preserved on the back of a postage stamp. The price is up to $5 for the standard dosage, 200 micrograms. The nonpareil in the field is a San Francisco chemist who distributes free samples at massive LSD parties and allegedly has become a millionaire through illegal sales. He's spoken of with reverence by one of his Los Angeles pushers, who's also a user.
Owsley really knows how to make acid. Right. So that all the impurities were taken out of it. Now, Owsley really has dynamite, righteous acid.
The continuing danger in buying on the black market is that the consumer never can be certain exactly what dosage he's getting. The average dosage is virtually invisible. 300 micrograms could be put on the point of a pin. There's the added possibility that an impure dosage could cause substantial organic damage. One teenager who had just illegally purchased some LSD and consumed it while standing on a sidewalk voiced her fears.
And it scares me not knowing exactly what my proper dosage is. And I have to take it behind the law because there's no other way.
Another girl reported the size of her dosage.
The first time it was half a cap. Just the trees and the sky and even the grocery store was beautiful. I could have stayed in it for hours.
A teenager noted how much LSD she consumed on her last trip.
Oh, yeah, I took half a cap of a 500 milligram cap.
She described how she knew it was a 500 cap.
Well, you know what a 500 cap looks like. You know what I mean? They're small.
Queried about her largest dose, a young girl responded,
Well, it was 15 drops of a concentrate of 400 micrograms a drop. And I know it wasn't good because it immediately hit my spine. I was in sheer agony. It was tapping my spinal fluid.
The girl's answer underlines the abject ignorance of many users. LSD cannot possibly tap the spinal fluid. Captain Alfred W. Tremblay, commander of the Narcotic Division of the Los Angeles Police Department, explains the confusion surrounding the LSD numbers game.
Or a year ago, a person could buy LSD and know that he's using 50 micrograms. Today, or a year from now, there'll be no such guarantee from a pharmaceutical company. It will be a bootleg version similar to heroin, to where an addict shoots heroin, might be shooting 2% heroin, he might be shooting 25% heroin. When you buy it from a illegitimate source, there's no guarantee on the quality. We had a backyard chemist under investigation at this time, and he was producing sufficient amount of LSD to make 1 million capsules in a 3-month period. Our information is the same individual has now enlarged his activities, and I would estimate that this individual is producing for consumption in Southern California in excess of 1 million capsules a month.
Student health centers and psychiatric wards rapidly filling with acid heads who cracked up following bad trips or an inability to assimilate the LSD experience are already a fact. 1 out of every 6 admissions at the UCLA Neuropsychiatric Institute is attributed to LSD. Dr. Thomas Ungerleider, resident psychiatrist at that facility, reports their symptoms upon arrival.
They may be severely depressed with suicidal tendencies or have made very serious suicide attempts. They may be confused, wandering about, not knowing where they are. They may be hallucinating, that is, hearing voices or seeing things. Or they may be extremely anxious to the point of panicky.
Reports of such unfortunate trips do little to deter most users, especially those attending high schools and colleges. They go right on experimenting with LSD, waiting for psychedelic lightning to strike. More often, they're swayed by extraordinary experiences related to them by their friends. Here's one such recollection, told by a young insurance company employee.
Because I was really loaded. I mean, I came out of the shower jumping around telling everybody how groovy it was to take a shower. And it was like, well, it was like being under a thunderstorm with great big drops of rain, because you could really feel the water coming. And you could just, it almost felt, it was weird, it almost felt like you could feel your pore going, sopping up the water, you know, your whole body was just going, like a great big sponge, you know, and it was like a massage. It was so groovy. You can't believe how groovy it was. It wasn't just water hitting you, taking a shower, soap, and out you go, you know, towel off. It was just, oh wow, you know, it was like a caress, you know, kind of, and you could really feel the hot and the cold. You could feel hot and cold, you know, and each little drop that came out was a different one. You know, it wasn't, I don't think the water must mix inside. It must come out hot and cold or something, because you could feel hot, cold all over you. It was really groovy. It was, I guess the word for it is it was sensual. You know, it just, your body just, oh, it grooved, you know. It was really neat.
A member of an instrumental group which records psychedelic music reveals her rapturous LSD trips.
God, I'm always tripping though, and always freaking out. And sometimes I freak out with everything, because I'm just freaking out anyway, just freely. You know, one time in the swimming pool, on my back, I just about 3 hours in the pool. You know, yeah. Complete silence, if I remember. And I became part of the water, and part of the air, part of all the color in the air, part of space, and it was me and I was it, and you know, it all melted in together. That's why I stayed there so long. I didn't realize time. I remember dancing after that, dancing quite a bit. After that, lying down, and all the sounds that I heard completely faded away. Everything got so distant. Because it got so distant, and I went right into my own head. Closed my eyes. Started seeing all, you know, everything that was in my head at the time. 10,000 teddy bears and millions of teacups, you know, things like that, and written happy birthday.
The same girl reveals what these insights have meant to her.
In what way?
God, well, I've had to look at myself in all kinds of ways. It's when you open those doors down there into where the rats are running around, you shine light on them, you know, and you bring it all out. You see where it's at, and you keep feeling more light, like, you know, it happens to Dracula when he goes in the sunshine. Dies. And the evil is brought out, and you can look at it, and the good and everything. LSD helps me to remember. Grass helps me to forget. You know, I don't know.
See? Told you it was going to be weird. That was LSD the Scene. And that was, of course, LSD, a documentary report, Side 1. You're listening to Pop Culture right here on Cheer FM and on Radio Gordo. And without further ado, let's get into Side 2. This portion is The Trip.
LSD itself certainly is not fatal, but for individuals temporarily irrational in mind and spirit, it can be the propellant toward a swift demise. Accidents and suicides have been reported. High on the drug, an adolescent slashed his arm and bled to death in a field of lilies. Even homicidal tendencies can emerge. The fortunate, among those who become unhinged under LSD, at least manage to stay alive. For a 14-year-old truant, it was difficult enough defining one personality, her own. She was asked when she took LSD for the first time.
Right before my 14th birthday, 13.
You were 13 years old.
And it brought a lot of things forward that I wasn't quite ready for. And I become a lot more aware, a little bit sharper through, taking LSD, but I wasn't quite ready for it. It's put me in a very strange state of mind ever since. I've been taking psychiatric treatment because of my LSD trips.
When he dropped out of college, a Southern Californian named Brian found himself in a constant state of rebellion. He grew a stubbly blonde goatee on his chin. Brian, whose photograph can be seen on the jacket of this album, is a dedicated LSD user.
I would say lately it's just been about once every 3 weeks I've been turning on. And I'm on a constant high all the time. I groove on life, and that's all I need to groove on. I love life.
He was asked whether he had any fears about such habitual usage of the chemical.
No, I'm not worried about it. In my opinion, the ones you hear the most about are all the bad cases, the bum trips are the ones you really read about. And inwardly, I believe I am beautiful. And as long as I carry the thought that I'm beautiful and everything around me is beautiful, I have no worry about a bum trip whatsoever.
You've never had a bum trip?
Never had a bum trip.
Brian's boast was premature. With the consent of his girlfriend, 6 microphones were concealed in a Los Angeles studio apartment to record the actual sounds of his 34th trip. 8 people participated in the LSD party, which began at 8:30 on a Saturday night and ended 12 hours later. This remarkable, sometimes incoherent transcript illustrates a phantasmagoria of fear, terror, grief, exultation, and finally breakdown. Its highlights have been compressed on this recording to make their own disquieting points. The time is 9:30 p.m., 1 hour after the participants have eaten sugar cubes saturated with LSD. We hear Brian and his fellow travelers observing their gradual transformation.
Brian, you're getting all red. You're getting high. I know I'm getting high. Feel it.
It's grabbed me a long time ago.
Come here, look at your eyeballs, man. They go like
Yeah.
this. They go big and small.
They go big and small. I was looking at it.
Look at mine.
Yes, they
No,
go
come
big
here,
and
Brian.
small. Wow. Oh, this is her first time. My first time. I'm with you. Okay. My eyes are watering. They want to stop watering. It's just one big laughing gas. That's all it is.
Hey, Brian.
Oh,
Yes, but wait the flowers.
What?
You're just starting, wait.
You childish hog. Did you eat it? You stupid idiot. He's flipping out. That's all.
I think you're flip. I think you're off.
He's gonna eat it. Did you bite that? That belongs to the camera. Where's the camera?
This cat has been.
Where's the camera?
He's got.
Come on.
Brian, come on, man. You know.
You can't rep that.
No, I'm
Stop it.
Yeah, eat my records too. What the hell?
Brian's been amusing his friends by chewing on some plastic flash bulbs.
No, really. Let's have a little reality here, man. You guys see no reality, huh? No reality.
Don't pressure, man. Because it's time is beautiful.
Brian's mood is gradually changing. He orders all of his friends into another room and closes the door. He sits alone on the wooden floor, visible only by the dim light shining from the bathroom. He talks to himself.
Doesn't know the difference already? I do. Because I know the difference. I don't want your damn world. I'm back with you. I'm so far out of my mind. I'm going to eliminate that part of it. Wow. There's so... Look at everything so... It's just so... You know, wow. What? It's great. Great. Come in. Come in. Come into my world. Come into the world of reality. Come into the world of materialistic things. Come in and be ready to be ate up by society. And if you're lucky, we can go out and get drunk tonight. And be happy. And be gay. Oops. I'm gonna get a little more love. Oh, oh. I'm so happy right where I am right now. Right where I am, I'm so happy. I wish everyone else could be like that. What am I? A ballet dancer. But I can ballet. Voila. 'Cause they don't know what is happening to my mind. I think they're wrong. Oh, what a beautiful way to go. We get like a little kitty cat, go pitty pat, go kitty cat, little pitty pat. Meow. Man, I'm laying here right now. I'm living. And I'm tripping. Yet, at the snap of a finger, I can come down into real reality. Like I said, all I gotta do is snap them once. With one little snip, I'm right down here at the lowest, I'll be down with all the rest of the animals. Down where everyone's gonna bite everybody. And hit everybody. And want to take everybody. All you gotta do is snap your finger. And I'll become one of them. But if I don't snap my fingers, if I don't snap these two fingers here.
The time is now 1 a.m. Brian is unable to snap his fingers and terminate the trip, which continues.
I ain't never gonna snap them two fingers. Always gonna be happy. Gonna be together. I don't, there again, when you get in the world where you gotta have, just like, I don't mean like that, man, I can snap my fingers all day and I ain't gonna do nothing. I'm gonna stay right where I am. But see, you're putting enough in the world there again, man. You aren't in the world, you're in here. You're where I am. You don't understand. You don't know what the hell I am, do you? Why? I can beat my head off. I don't even know if I can ask myself why anymore. It must be, who am I? Who am I? This lad. I know, I can't think of who he is.
He sobs as his joy turns to fear.
What? Don't turn the lights on, man. Turn the lights off. Man, turn the lights off. Turn the lights off. Turn the lights off, Flo. That's all I'm asking of you. I want everybody out of here. True. I don't give a cool. Everybody out. Right now. I don't give a cool. Out. Come on. Everybody. Man, I'm in the scene. I'm right here. Right here in the middle. I'm pacified. I'm happy. I'm enjoying life. You aren't content to let me be, are you? Get off my back! Wow! Wow, somebody's gonna pay for this bum trip, boy! This is a bum!
Brian's rocky journey ended 12 hours after it so innocently had begun. He was shattered by it. Dr. Sidney Cohen evaluates its meaning.
This young man never had a bummer in some 33 LSD trips. Every one of them was a delight. Everything under control. He needed only to snap his fingers, and down he came any time. But on voyage 34, he finally met himself coming down an up staircase, and the encounter was crushing. Without the help to bail him out, he was caught up in a disorganized turmoil, in a hell of madness gone mad. This, then, is the bum trip, the final face-to-face meeting with oneself, with the whole choking mess of personal conflicts bursting forth. Brian had successfully slipped around them on 33 journeys, and this one started out no different than the rest. But then he was hurled into a chaos that never seemed to end, and with no one to help him deal with it. Perhaps this was more than a bum trip, from which one eventually recovers, little the worse for a ghastly day, which was an eternity. For there has been a change. He remains shaken, unproductive, verging on something a little more ominous. Brian learned nothing from it. His friends, they went their merry way. His family, they don't count anyway. If he should break down completely, he becomes just another LSD casualty to be cared for. Was this the last of his explorations? I wonder. The strange, childlike thinking of the acid set goes something like this. If LSD got me into this buzzing confusion, then LSD might get me out.
The abuses symbolized by Brian's bum trip worry those concerned with the untapped potential of the drug. Already there's promising evidence that LSD has relieved the anxiety and pain of terminal cancer patients, aided in the treatment of certain mental illnesses, advanced the limited progress of some schizophrenic children, and helped to rehabilitate chronic alcoholics like Charles Dietrich, who, after taking LSD, founded Synanon, a rehabilitation center for narcotic addicts. An amendment to the Federal Dangerous Drug Act recently made LSD manufacture, sale, and transportation felonious. California and Nevada statutes make mere possession a crime. The LSD cult, predictably, views such regulation with rancor. Leary contends that LSD is religious in nature, and banning it would violate constitutional rights. Mrs. Laura Huxley, the widow of Aldous Huxley, who visualized the acid era in his book, Island, vociferously opposes the suppression of LSD. At the same time, she points out the advantages of its use.
When abused or misused, it can become dangerous. But in that sense, an automobile is also dangerous, yet we drive all the time. Freeways are dangerous, drinking is dangerous, smoking is dangerous, some sports are dangerous, falling in love is dangerous. But I mean, being alive is a continuous risk. I am convinced, however, that the psychedelic experience is one of enormous importance and must be approached with respect and love. For psychedelics are stimulators of ideas and feelings, but generally, these ideas and feelings would express themselves constructively rather than violently or destructively. If it were possible during a riot to spray small doses of LSD from an helicopter into the air, people would soon quieten and not be hurt.
Where such a proposal may seem impractical, a group of recalcitrant teenagers in Amsterdam, Holland, recently did attempt to improvise their own version of Mrs. Huxley's theory. They threatened to disorient the local population by placing several ounces of LSD into the city's water supply. In the United States, authorities seriously lack the necessary fingers to shore up the LSD dike. Despite existing laws, a cascading LSD torrent is upon us. 3-day binges are becoming stylish. Dosages escalate. While authorities agree that LSD is not physically habit-forming, it can become psychologically habituating, and not only for teenagers. Worse than psychological dependence, for some, is the emergence of the drug as a fashionable commodity. Its increasing usage, especially in acceptable circles, has prompted a unique variety of testimonials. A Los Angeles girl declares,
I mean, a lot of people say, oh, it can make you sterile and it can make you lose your sight or deteriorate your brain or all this kind of stuff. I don't think that having children could make up for what I'm going to get out of it eventually. Because, well, you start getting into philosophy when you talk about that, but, I mean, you start saying, why am I alive, man, you know? And, if you are ready to die when you die, and you know what's happening, or you think you know what's happening, then, that's a lot better than having 10 kids. It'd be nice if people could get it as a graduation present from college or something. It'd be a beautiful thing.
The graduates of a Southern California prep school have already implemented the young lady's suggestion. Some 67 of them recently celebrated their convocation by turning on with LSD. Now, if there's any doubt that LSD looms as the new chic, one can only note a recent Manhattan wedding where LSD mixed with pineapple juice was served at a penthouse reception. The 80 guests tripped out on views of the East River, while the altruistic newlyweds tiptoed away on their own honeymoon trip. So that they won't be considered square, vulnerable students bow to pressures to dip into acid-laden communal punch served at large gatherings. Bacchanalian romps on the lawn and mixed skinny-dipping revelries have become commonplace amongst the acid heads. A pigtailed brunette was asked whether she had sex under LSD.
In your course?
No, I wouldn't want to. I really wouldn't.
What about you?
No. You can be with somebody you like to be with and just touch their cheek or hold their hand, and it's the most beautiful thing in the world. You don't need sex under LSD. You don't have to do that. I really think it's just, I don't know.
It's a weird trip.
It's a weird trip. Because you're so satisfied with just holding hands that going for more than that isn't beautiful anymore.
The sexual element is discreetly downgraded among the pariahs of LSD and emporia like the Psychedelic Bookshop in San Francisco, which purveys LSD guidebooks, quarterlies, lecture courses, and atonal music while avoiding more prurient merchandise. One of the leading LSD spokesmen, however, is poet Allen Ginsberg, a heavily bearded remnant of the Beat generation. When sufficiently stimulated during many of his public poetry readings, the sound is unforgettable. The blending of a sustained organ and finger cymbals form the unusual background for his mystical chants.
Capable of us waging all suffering, true because not false. Therefore he proclaimed Pranya Paramita Mantram, and proclaimed Mantram says, gone, gone, completely gone, completely, utterly gone.
Ginsberg was one of the early advocates of peyote, another mind-expanding drug. He's taken LSD several times. One can only wonder how these experiences have affected his point of view. Here he recounts his catharsis in the wake of LSD.
Head of the Nyingma sect, when I brought him my sorrows of LSD, said, if you see anything horrible, don't cling to it. If you see anything beautiful, don't cling to it. The Highest Perfect Wisdom Sutra, taught me by Jack Kerouac 10 years ago, later taught me again by Gary Snyder last year, later impressed on me again by an experience of the wave vibrations of the universe under DMT at Ken Kesey's house in California, is a statement about the nature of the universe which is accepted by the Tibetan Buddhists, the Zen Buddhists, the Theravadins, the Hinayanas, the Mahayanas, all the yanas of every direction, of all universes, in and out, all sentient beings accepting tranquility. Fairly well. Well, fairly.
Ken Kesey is another prime mover in the LSD order. He organized and incorporated a peripatetic repertory troupe called the Acid Test, a group formed to simulate and stimulate the LSD experiences for paying audiences. Projectors, flash signs, messages, and kaleidoscopic patterns on the walls. Blinking strobe lights silhouette the dancing throngs, making them resemble fragmented memories of an LSD high. Here's one sample of the Acid Test music and lyrics.
There's no Christmas here, there is only a ship, there is only you, there is only me, there is only us. So if you ever feel your mind and body leaving the ship, you just got to grab out and touch someone on the hip, because that's all that's left is the ship. And we're all on the ship, and we all are gonna make the trip. We're on the ship, we're on the ship, and we are gonna make the trip. Oh, they're gonna make the trip, because once we signed up on the ship, we had no choice but to make the trip. And so we're gonna make the trip, so I said, wig out, I said. That last bit of energy pushed us completely into uncharted realms.
The supporters and detractors of LSD currently are at loggerheads and will probably remain that way interminably. We've attempted to objectively display both points of view. On the basis of the evidence, however, the answer to the LSD problem should be just about as obvious as the basic question: is this trip really necessary?
And that's side 2 of LSD, a documentary report, an interesting audio release of the late 60s, sort of looking at the whole culture surrounding LSD, that problem child of Albert Hoffman that is taking culture by forceful kaleidoscopic storm at that time. And one of the guys caught squarely in the crosshairs of that firing of little love bullets and crazy paranoid thoughts was Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys. In 1967, he was working on the Beach Boys' follow-up to the 1966 just amazing LP release, Pet Sounds. He was working on an album that was going to be called Smile. He essentially had a nervous breakdown due to overindulgence in LSD, amongst other precarious mental state issues that had been dormant for a long time. He was freaking out big time, had a sandbox built in the studio. He'd sit in there and play. At one point, they were working on a track, and there was a fire that happened down the street. It happened to be a song that ended up being released as Mrs. O'Leary's Cow on the 2004 version of Smile, when that one finally came out. But we're going to check out some other stuff. LSD was doing some weird things to the music scene in the late 1960s, as these two tracks from the Beach Boys will definitely prove. We have Fall Breaks and Back to Winter. Before that, this is Vegetables. Chomping, said to have provided in part by Paul McCartney on a trip to Southern California.
I'm gonna be around my vegetables. I'm gonna chow down my vegetables. I love you most of all, my favorite vegetable. If you brought a big brown bag of them home, I'd jump up and down and hope you'd toss me a carrot. I'm gonna keep well my vegetables, cart off and sell my vegetables. I love you most of all, my favorite vegetable. Oh, table veggie. I tried to kick the ball, but my tenny flew right off. I'm red as a beet, 'cause I'm so embarrassed. Jump, 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 I know that you feel better when you send us in your letter and tell us the name of your favorite vegetable. I know that you feel better when you send us in your letter and tell us the name of your favorite vegetable.
the best of the best of the Beach Boys.
It was like a miracle, a miraculous process.
You want to get on God's wavelength? This'll take you there. The real thing, man. This'll open your mind.
Well, when I took the LSD, you know, it was an 8-hour pill. And by around 2:30 to 3 in the morning, I went to the piano and wrote Some of California Girls. So the LSD did have an upside, you know, obviously helped me write songs.
I'll leave that for the old poets.
I really dig those styles they wear.
You like jazz? Yeah, I like all music. Good. Makes you feel like living. Silence is death.
I can see that one of us needs to take a nap.
And who could sleep with all that racket going on?
Matthew just got in. He's very excited. Apparently he's been asked to play the drums somewhere.
China would be nice. Matthew? Hey, Dad, guess what? Listen, please, will you shut that music off? Why is the music so loud?
So I can hear it.
Why would you want to hear it?
It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you please?
Stay for good beaches.
Beach Boys?
Yes, I know. Surf's up in the kitchen. I'm going to wash the vegetables.
I live with Woody Woodpecker.
It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you? Beach Boys?
Yes, I know.
Watch it now.
It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you?
It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you? Beach Boys?
Yes, I know.
You know what this is? Acid alliteration.
That's right.
It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you?
Acid alliteration.
That's it. You like it? It's a home, isn't it?
Acid alliteration. It's the Beach Boys, Dad.
All right, shut it off, will you? Beach Boys?
Yes, I know.
What are you trying to tell me? You're gonna play with the Beach Boys?
Maybe. See, they're doing this benefit concert for Just Say No to Drugs, right?
You and the Beach Boys?
Maybe. You Just Say No to Drugs, right?
That's right.
Acid alliteration. You Just Say No to Drugs, right?
That's right.
And the Beach Boys?
Just Say No to Drugs, right?
That's right.
Abort, retry, ignore. You and the Beach Boys?
That's right.
Okay, I'll ignore.
Everybody's expecting a teenage symphony. He's out there recording noise. You used to always call it noise before.
Now, if you get paid, it's music.
That's right.
Acid alliteration.
Acid alliteration. Wish I could be California. Wish I could be California.
Acid alliteration.
Acid alliteration. Abort, retry, ignore.
Acid alliteration.
Brian is like a little kid. You tell him he can't have something and he'll find a way to get it. Look, I don't like him anymore.
That's right.
Hey, Brian, I know you're kind of a shy guy, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Acid alliteration.
He was a little far out, you might say.
Help me! Help me! Help me!
But he always meant very well.
Get the spider on my face!
What?
There's a spider on my face! Get it off!
He was a little far out, you might say.
There's something on your face.
He was a little far out, you might say.
It rocked, you know? It really rocked.
Abort, retry, ignore.
Didn't you know that?
Initially, Glenn Campbell filled in, and then in April of 1965, I got a call to take his place.
You did? Well, for one night, you're gonna be a Beach Boy.
I jumped on a plane to New Orleans, squeezed into a pair of Alan Jardine's pants that were 3 sizes too small.
Oh, that's true. I'm so proud of you.
And 4 inches too short. And 5 hours later, I was on stage singing Surfing USA. And that's how I joined the Beach Boys. I think once Brian pulled back, the whole magic pulled back. It got so complicated in the Beach Boy world that Brian just called me, and it was a request to come down to Miami where the band was recording.
You did? Well, for one night, you're going to be a Beach Boy.
When I came back, you know, it was like I hadn't missed a beat and all that stuff we've seen on TV a million times, you know.
Ignore. Okay, I'll ignore.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know. I haven't a clue.
An interesting audio collage there. California Girls on Acid, Silence is Death, Endless Syncopation is the extended name of that track. Interesting melange of all kinds of Beach Boys stuff and other cultural artifacts in there. Perfect lysergic follow-up to a couple of weird cuts from the Beach Boys, Fall Breaks, and Back to Winter and Vegetables. I'm Randall LeBron. This is Popular Culture on Cheer FM and on Radio Gordo. Another area that this music was influenced by the pervasive chemical LSD was 90s rave cultures. These next two artists will sort of prove, although the second in the pair wasn't necessarily the 90s. Fatboy Slim most definitely was. Now, acid house was a big genre. These two tracks fit within that. This chemical, I mean, since its introduction into basically human culture in a big way on April 19th, 1943, has influenced so much art, music, movies, and literature, and will continue to do so. Here's two of the more modern examples. We have Simian Mobile Disco on the far side, but this is Fatboy Slim. This is Acid 8000.
so easy to get acid. You can get it anywhere.
funky title right there, Tits and Acid from Simian Mobile Disco. They followed up Fatboy Slim with Acid 8000, two examples of how LSD influenced electronic music in the 1990s and onward. There is a definite edge to acid house and music like that. It's a lot different than trance music, and I know that these are subgenres that for most people might go over your head. It's hard to pick up the distinctions, but they are definitely there. You can't deny the fact that Another Chemical, Ecstasy, had a massive influence on the sound of house music. LSD had its own distinct influence on the electronic music of the 90s as well. Those two examples that we heard there, they work. There are other examples that are maybe a little more pertinent that we could get into maybe in a more specifically electronic music episode, and I could definitely see us getting into that at some point. This is Pop Your Culture on Chair FM and Radio Gordo. We can't have a show about LSD without this. This is an interesting little documentary that was put together about the infamous no-hitter pitched by Doc Ellis back in the early 1970s. He was high on LSD when he managed to pitch a no-hitter baseball game. And you know what? He's going to tell the story, or at least the story is going to be told about him a lot better than I'm doing right now. So let's check this out.
We flew into San Diego, and I asked the manager, could I go home? Because we had an off day. So he said, yeah. So I took some LSD at the airport because I knew where it would hit me. I'd be in my little area and I know where to go. So that's how I got to my friend's girlfriend's house. She said, what's wrong with you? I said, I'm high as a Georgia pine. The next day, which I thought was the next day, she told me, you better get up. You got to go pitch. I said, pitch? I pitch tomorrow. Hell, what are you talking about? Because I had got up in the middle of the morning and took some more acid. She grabbed the paper, brought me the sports page and showed me, boom. I said, oh, wow. What happened to yesterday? She said, I don't know, but you better get to that airport. Shucks. It's all right. Now, this was in the 70s, and Greenies was Dexamil. That was the drug of choice back then, was a stimulant. Over 90% of major leagues was using Dexamil when I was playing. And when I got to the game, there was a lady down there in San Diego who used to always have the bennies for me, Benzedrine, which is another stimulant. I went out to the dugout and reached up because she was standing over the rail. She always stood over the rail and had a pretty little gold pouch. So I got the bennies, went on back in the clubhouse, took them. The game started and the mist started, misty rain. So all during the game was a little mist. The opposing team and my teammates, they knew I was high, but they didn't know what I was high on. Because they had no idea what LSD was other than what they see on TV with the hippies. I didn't see the hitters. All I could tell was if they was on the right side or the left side. The catcher put tape on his fingers so I could see the signals. We had a rookie on the team at that particular time named Dave Cash, and he kept saying after the first inning, he said, you got a no-no going, a no-hitter. I said, yeah, right. And I looked. Then around the fourth inning, he'd say it again, got a no-no going. I looked. Yep. But I could also feel the pressure from other players wanting to tell him to shut up. It's a superstition thing where you're not supposed to say nothing if somebody's throwing a no-hitter. There were times when the ball was hit back at me, I jumped because I thought it was coming fast, but the ball was coming slow. Third baseman come by and grabbed the ball and threw somebody out. I never caught a ball from the catcher with two hands because I thought that was a big old ball. And then sometimes it looked small. One time I covered first base and I caught the ball and I tagged the base all in one motion. I said, oh, I just made a touchdown. I didn't pay no attention to the score. You know, I'm trying to get the batters out. And I'm throwing a crazy game. I'm hitting people, walking people, throwing balls in the dirt. They're going everywhere.
Now we go for the pièce de résistance. We've moved to the bottom of the ninth on a no-hitter, leading 2-0.
It was easier to pitch with the LSD because I was so used to medicating myself. That's the way I was dealing with the fear of failure. The fear of losing, the fear of winning. It's just it was part of the game. You know, you get to the major leagues and you say, I got to stay here. What do I need?
Everybody in our bullpen is standing and walking around nervously. They want to run and grab Doc. Now, 2 balls, 2 strikes, and here's the pitch. Strike 3, he got it. They're going after him. He got it. They're mounting Doc Ellis on a no-hitter.
Pretty far out story, right? All right, let's wrap up this show tonight, and I think this way is going to be a perfect way to do it. Augustus Owsley Stanley III is one of the biggest and most important figures in the world of LSD. He is known as the Bear. He managed to essentially bankroll the Grateful Dead back in the day, put together some of the sound systems. Bear's Choice was his favorite songs from the band. Without him, there wouldn't have been the Merry Pranksters and the acid tests and all of that kind of stuff. This guy dosed millions of people. He was one of the best LSD chemists the world has ever known. His influence is incredible, and at odds with the peace and love, vegetarian kind of hippie ideal, this guy was a guy who lived on almost entirely meat. Back in the 60s, when he was funding the house for the Grateful Dead to live in, if you opened up the fridge, you basically found nothing but meat, eggs, cheese, and milk in that fridge. Pretty wild, especially considering how so many stories are out there of people taking LSD and becoming instant vegetarians. Anyways, with his take on his place in the culture and some of the culture itself, this is Augustus Owsley Stanley III from November 7th, 2009.
So I've been all these different places you could go, and I've taken too much, I've taken too little. I've had accidents in the lab that splashed 2,000 micrograms into my mouth. Enough time to walk over to the couch and sit down. I think that this stuff that I did in the 60s was just what I did in the 60s. I did it because I had to. I didn't want to be an acid maker. I'm an artist. I wanted to be an artist, but an artist, I needed a tool, like a painter needs a paintbrush. People like Michelangelo, you know, and Benvenuto Cellini, who was one of my childhood heroes. He lived the life. I thought, now that's the life. And I'm doing the same thing. I'm making sculpture out of gold and things. And I'm doing it wildly and freely. And he was doing that. He started writing when he was in his 50s. And of course, you can probably remember it. Plus, he didn't take the things that I took either. But it's like writing something about Cellini or Michelangelo and focusing on the fact that they made paints. Michelangelo was a great paint maker. Give me a fucking break. They talk about me. Oh, he's a great acid maker. You're kidding. The acid's just a tool. It's like a screwdriver. It's a screwdriver for the brain, for the consciousness. It lets you get in there and find that volume knob, tweak it. Get rid of the filters for a while. Open things up. Move to the next level of mind work. You can do things like controlling amplifiers with your head on DMT. Then nobody knows about that. You can do things like hook it up with a whole sea of people, like at Woodstock, or Watkins Glen, or the acid test. Become like one mind, where you feel like a patchwork quilt. You feel sensations from a lot of the people around you. You can see things, hear things, think things that they're thinking. And all that kind of strange stuff. That's all another level of consciousness, but it must be something that's built in. It's something that's natural to us. We can't reach it without a little help. And that help occurs not in our bodies. That help occurs around us in the plant world, mostly. I think there probably are some animals, like, I've never taken, what is it called, fugu. which is a toxic liver of a certain fish, that's a deadly poisonous fish. And you take exactly the right amount and you're cool. You take a little bit too much and you're dead. And you take a little less and nothing happens. Now that's a little too twitchy for me, I'm afraid. So I'll never learn. But it sounds like what they describe, that it's very psychedelic. And of course, crazy people, that's why they used to call them psychotomimetics. Well, psychedelics aren't psychotomimetics any more than they're entheogens. I don't think they create gods within. I don't think they duplicate schizophrenia, or they like to call that bipolar these days. Schizophrenia is no longer PC. And I think what they actually do is they let go of the filters and they turn the game. And if you're a good guy, you become a really good guy. And if you're someone like Charles Manson, you better watch out, you know. I used to know a Hell's Angel, and he used to say to me, "Oh, I just love to get in a fight when I'm on acid." I said, "Yeah?" Because I'm thinking, the last thing I want to do is get in a fight when I'm on acid. And everybody I knew felt the same way. Oh, he said, "Yeah, the other guy, he's moving in slow motion. It's easy." And I thought, yeah, that's his nature. He loves to fight. I mean, the Hells Angels, they get in a fight with each other all the time just because they love to fight. I'm not trying to kill the other guy. They're get in a fight, right? Because they break themselves up, blow out their teeth, crack their nose. I don't matter. They never wash their blue jeans. What do you expect? Come on. But some of those guys were some of the most psychedelic people I ever met. I met them at Kesey's. Boy, once they discovered Kesey and the acid, these killer speed freak drunkards became, they just opened them up. They were the kind of guys that were right at the edge and fringe of society anyway, so you give this a little boost, they just went somewhere else. And in the end, they wore uniforms, they had rules. They were just like cops, except they were like cops are like dogs, Hells Angels were like wolves. The cops are the same kind, but you're much more likely to be killed by an angel than a cop. Unless you live in this state, which apparently the cops like to kill people better than they like to have lunch. So I don't know. Well, that's what I've heard anyway. I don't think any other state in Australia, they shoot as many people as they do here. I see it in the news all the time.
Thank you for tuning in to Poppy Culture. I've been your host, Randall Liberon. It's taking place here on Cheer FM and on Radio Gordo. Until next time, y'all be cool to one another. We'll catch you later.